Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named The Platform, Part 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a square concrete prison with a central square opening. Looking up, you see countless identical prison cells stacked above. Looking down, the abyss seems endless. Every morning, a platform descends from the top, laden with gourmet food. As the platform slowly moves downward, the food diminishes. Some inmates starve to death. Others survive by consuming the flesh of the deceased. Some choose to end their lives, and a few plan to revolt. In this confined and oppressive space, bloody revolutions erupt time and again. How can one escape this prison pit, akin to a hell on earth? And if they do manage to escape, will they merely stumble into another form of hell? Upon entry into the prison pit, every inmate has an interview, during which they can bring one item and choose one specific dish. The girl Melena chooses her ex-boyfriend's specialty croquettes, while a man in fat with a stocky frame chooses pizza and introduces himself as Mr. Fatty. Both are assigned to level 24. On the first day, Mr. Fatty's pizza is immediately snatched by someone else. The meat and cheese vanish, leaving only the crust. The inmates above inform him that it was the residents of level 21 who stole the pizza. Everyone supervises one another and passes information between floors. Enraged, Mr. Fatty plans to mimic the behavior and steal food for his fat stomach. But just as he grabs a drumstick, the two inmates above yell at him, insisting that people only eat their designated food or negotiate for an exchange. If everyone selfishly takes what they want, the platform will be empty halfway down and many will starve. Ignoring their warnings, Mr. Fatty picks up the drumstick again, but Melena offers one of her croquettes to appease him. This act wins praise from the inmates above, who call it noble behavior. They explain that if Melena and Mr. Fatty end up on a lower floor next month, the law will protect them. This is a dynamic prison. Each month, the floor assignments are randomized. When night falls and the red light glows, everyone must stay away from the opening, as the platform will rise rapidly back to the top after reaching the bottom. Its speed is so extreme that it could cut a person in half. Below, there is a commotion. The prisoners are passing messages by shouting. The enforcers at the lower levels have declared the residents of level 21 who stole the pizza as savages. 4 people from levels 19 and 20 are ordered to descend with the platform to subdue the culprits. When the platform reaches level 21, the sound of fighting ensues. Though the savages are eventually overpowered, the combatants, with their last strength, drag one savage onto the platform and descend to level 23. If the two inmates above cannot handle the situation, Melena and Mr. Fatty will have to step in. Melena immediately breaks apart a bed frame to use as a weapon, while Mr. Fatty stands with his fat frozen with fear. As the platform descends, one savage has already been beaten to death. The curly inmate drags another down, but his floormate above is engulfed in flames before she can push the scattered food off the platform. She falls heavily to the floor, her body charred. Melena rushes to extinguish the flames on her, while the remaining savage battles the curly inmate to the death. Mr. Fatty stays paralyzed with fear, but Melena intervenes just in time, helping the curly inmate subdue the savage. As the platform continues downward, the temperature inside plummets. Panicking, the curly inmate quickly pushes the scattered food onto the platform. In this prison pit, hiding food is forbidden, and the punishment mechanisms vary by floor. Level 24 enforces freezing penalties, while level 23 uses heat. The inmate was burned beyond recognition because she failed to clear the food in time. Seeing the savage tied up, Mr. Fatty finally dares to kick him in revenge for the stolen pizza. To mask his cowardice, he yells at the curly inmate, blaming him for delaying his pizza. He dismisses the laws as nonsense, claiming he seeks freedom to eat whatever he wants without interference. In the midst of their argument, the burned inmate succumbs to her injuries and is sent to hell to greet Satan. The curly inmate, overwhelmed, breaks down in tears and grabs Mr. Fatty by his greasy throat. Terrified, Mr. Fatty quiets down. The pressing issue now is what to do with the savage who has surrendered and begged for mercy. No one can bring themselves to kill him. The curly inmate suggests bringing the savage to the lower levels to find the enforcers. The so-called enforcers are those who have met the master. Long ago, the master starved for an entire month to prove that even on the lowest level, survival was possible. The following month, he voluntarily descended to an even lower level and cut off his own thigh to feed the starving inmates. His self-sacrifice taught many the value of unity. To ensure fair food distribution, a set of laws was established. Those who ate the master's flesh became enforcers, strictly upholding the rules, while those who broke them were deemed savages. Mr. Fatty was clearly unmoved by the story of the master. Instead, the word human flesh caught his attention, and he wanted to eat the charred inmate while she was still warm. The curly inmate sternly reminded him that after the master sacrificed his flesh, the law strictly prohibited cannibalism. Without another word, the curly inmate pushed the inmate's corpse into the pit. Her body struck sharp edges as it fell, breaking into pieces before landing on the legendary 333rd floor, where a group of starving prisoners scrambled to collect the remains. After a brutal battle, Mr. Fatty finally got to eat the pizza he had longed for. Meanwhile, everyone on floors 19 to 23 had perished, leaving their untouched food to descend with the platform. Just as Mr. Fatty prepared to feast, the curly inmate poured the dead prisoner's food into the smelly toilet and flushed it away. He reminded both of them that eating food from the deceased was also against the law. Even getting an extra bite could provoke dissatisfaction, leading to more conflict. After 2 days of recovery, the curly inmate set off with the savage, hoping to meet the enforcers before reaching floor 44, where other savages were rumored to be. Over the following days, Melena continued flushing the deceased's food, much to Mr. Fatty's frustration. Unable to resist any longer, he sneaked a bite of a meat roll, but was immediately spotted by an old woman on the floor above. Though he didn't touch it again, the meat roll mysteriously continued to shrink, and he accused the old woman of stealing it. In such a prison without privacy, where a man and a woman shared the same space, it was inevitable they would grow closer. They bathed and used the toilet in full view of each other's naked body. Over time, their relationship became more intimate. Melena would help Mr. Fatty shave the hair on his back, and he would generously share his pizza. On the last day of the first month, the two had a heartfelt conversation. Mr. Fatty claimed to be a mathematician and wrote a symbol on the wall. While most interpreted as the imaginary unit I, Mr. Fatty disagreed. He argued that imaginary numbers contradict every physical law of the universe. If people could accept imaginary numbers, then everything was meaningless, including mathematics, the thing he once loved most. In a fit of existential despair, he quit his job and abandoned his child, moving back to his parents' home. Melena, curious, asked if he had children. How could he irresponsibly walk away from them? Mr. Fatty dodged the question and instead asked about Melena's past, but she revealed nothing. As they spoke, exciting news spread upward. Food had reached level 175, breaking all previous records. Melena was thrilled, believing the law was finally bringing justice to those on the lower levels. She felt proud of her contributions to upholding the law and danced with joy, infecting Mr. Fatty with her happiness. However, their celebration was short-lived. The next morning, they found themselves assigned to level 180. Since food never reached past level 175, their platform would arrive completely empty. Enduring hunger made time crawl. Melena used a paintbrush to draw and distract herself, while Mr. Fatty fiddled with the lighter he had brought. Eventually, he began hallucinating, imagining his hand as a roasted pig's trotter. When the flame burned his palm, the scent of seared flesh was oddly appetizing. After what felt like an eternity, a severed human head fell down the shaft. Cheers erupted from nearby prisoners, who announced that the enforcers had defeated the savages, beheading them to restore order. Food would soon arrive. But before food came, Mr. Fatty developed a severe case of hunger-induced acidosis, as if his body was desperately signaling for sustenance. Days later, more severed heads fell, and the prisoners learned that the enforcers had reached floor 168, eliminating the savages on floors 168 and 169. Food was expected soon, but along with the good news came bad news. Someone had reported to the enforcers that a man on floor 24 had eaten the food of a deceased ally. Melena realized they were referring to Mr. Fatty. To protect him, she lied, claiming they had previously lived on floor 46. Deep in thought, Mr. Fatty confessed that he was neither a mathematician nor someone who abandoned his child. The truth was, he had dropped out of school at 16 and repeatedly failed in business ventures. His adoptive parents eventually kicked him out, leaving him no choice but to move in with his biological parents. His erratic behavior and defiance wore them down, and they ultimately sent him to the prison pit for rehabilitation. Awakened by this reflection, Mr. Fatty realized the magnitude of his mistakes. Taking others' food and implicating Melena in his wrongdoings were just drops in the ocean of his failures. His entire life seemed built on one misstep after another. He decided that only death could atone for his sins. Before taking his life, he confessed his failures to Melena, revealing his true self to the woman who had repeatedly defended him. He asked her to escape the prison, and if she could, visit his child on his behalf. He admitted he missed his child deeply. With those final words, he doused himself in the lighter fluid he had brought and leaped into the pit, igniting a massive fireball as his body plummeted to the 333rd floor. The resulting blaze was inexplicably large and fierce, far beyond what anyone would have expected. The third month came quickly. Melena woke up on the 51st floor. Her new cellmate was a one-armed woman. As per routine, the floors above and below shared their food details to monitor and prevent theft. The previous month had seen many savages eliminated, and new prisoners filled their places. Miss One-Arm seemed clueless, likely a newcomer, so Melena patiently explained the rules. When the platform descended, the food was a mess. Two new groups of savages emerged on the upper floors. Fortunately, an enforcer was stationed at the top, and it seemed only a matter of time before the problem was dealt with. Melena forced herself to eat the ruined croquettes. Miss One-Arm, seeing her plums half-eaten, refused to touch them. Soon, a rebellion broke out on the 54th floor. A savage had killed his new cellmate. By the rules, those on the 52nd and 53rd floors were supposed to handle it, but Melena wanted to join. She recognized the savage from the second floor the previous month, a glutton whose actions left her starving for weeks and indirectly caused the death of Mr. Fatty. As the night wore on, Melena heard the familiar click of a lighter, reminding her of Mr. Fatty. When dawn broke and the platform descended, Miss One-Arm dismantled her bed, grabbed a steel pipe, and jumped onto the platform. She seemed to understand Melena's determination and invited her to join the mission to the 54th floor. On the 52nd floor, a cellmate warned them against going. It was against the law, but they persisted. The blonde cellmate on the 52nd floor volunteered to stay behind to maintain the communication chain. 5 minutes later, the platform descended to the 53rd floor. The residents didn't recognize Melena or Miss One-Arm, so they lied, claiming orders from above. Together, 5 of them headed to the 54th floor. A bearded savage struck first using his sensitive beard, quickly killing one of the 53rd floor men. Cornered, he feigned surrender but jumped onto the platform. Miss One-Arm attacked but was easily subdued. Just as a shard of glass was about to pierce her eye, Melena leapt down to help. An old man from the 55th floor tried to intervene but was killed instantly. Only a fool stood by watching the chaos. The two women worked together to subdue the bearded savage again, who begged for his bearded life, claiming he had been trapped for 18 months and ate extra food just to survive. As Melena hesitated, the bearded savage jumped back onto the platform. Miss One-Arm cried in a chicken voice and chased after him, but it was too late. Later that night, while the fool pretended to sleep, Melena and Miss One-Arm talked. Miss One-Arm revealed she had been in the pit for 6 months. On her first day, she met an inmate friend who taught her to live by the rules. Together, they quelled rebellions. But one day, they found a malnourished young man and secretly fed him food meant for the dead. Days later, an enforcer named Dagon appeared, punishing them by breaking their arms. The inmate friend resisted and gouged out Dagon's eye during the struggle. As punishment, Dagon stripped her naked, tied her to the platform, and let the lower floors devour her alive. The law prohibited cannibalism, but Dagon, as a lawmaker, wielded ultimate authority. Melena, shocked, had always believed enforcers were noble saviors. She vowed to help others and make the pit fairer until her sentence ended. Miss One-Arm, however, told her there was no such thing as serving your sentence. The only escape was to flee during the monthly release of anesthetic gas. She had spent months searching for something to block the gas. As she spoke, they didn't notice the fool eavesdropping, overhearing their plan. Before long, another savage was sentenced by Dagon, tied under the platform and devoured. Sensing danger, Miss One-Arm urged Melena to move downward quickly. Suddenly, Dagon descended with his enforcers. Smiling, he praised the women for their bravery in quelling the rebellion, rewarding them with food. But then, he declared punishments for their crimes. The blonde cellmate on the 52nd floor, for failing to intervene, would be executed. The other inmate, guilty of one offense, would lose an arm. Melena faced the same fate. But as a repeat offender, Miss One-Arm was sentenced to death like her inmate friend. Dagon explained that fear was necessary to tame beasts. The fool revealed Melena's escape plan but misunderstood it, claiming they needed dog meat to escape. His absurd story made everyone laugh their shit off, sparing Melena. As Miss One-Arm was tied to the platform, Melena experienced true despair, powerless to intervene. After losing her arm, she bid Miss One-Arm farewell. In the pit's hidden chambers, children played on a slide. Their innocence gave way to chaos as they fought over it, their twisted bodies reflecting twisted humanity. In the 4th month, Melena found herself on a new floor with a new cellmate, a cannibalistic old man armed with a knife. She recalled Miss One-Arm's advice about finding the painting, The Drowning Dog, made from a material that could block the gas. When the platform arrived, she stood on it confidently, stepping on the food, and invited the old man to join her. Below, 2 savages prepared for battle, but Melena proposed unity, forming a collective to challenge the enforcers. Her group grew, even recruiting the bearded savage. Though she couldn't control the violence, she aimed to unite the pit. That night, they discovered the drowning dog, hidden by a kind old woman. The group celebrated with wine, weapons, and laughter. At dawn, the enforcers sabotaged the platform, flushing the food away. Doggin planned to starve everyone for a month, then return to execute the rebels. He offered amnesty to those who surrendered, except for the leaders. Many defected immediately. The cannibalistic old man proposed using loyalists as food. The group's laughter echoed ominously, their hunger overtaking their humanity. Looking at the smiling faces of the cannibalistic monsters, Melena revealed a bitter expression. She was an artist who once reported a sculpture exhibition. That day, her boyfriend brought his son to meet her, the stepmother. Unexpectedly, the boy tripped in front of a sculpture named Wild Dog's Claw, its sharp claw piercing his eye and reaching his brain, killing him instantly. Before the tragedy, someone had advised her to install safety barriers, but she insisted on a bold and avant-garde style, refusing to do so. Her lawyer skillfully defended her, and she was found not guilty. Even the compensation was covered by the insurance company. Ironically, the accident brought her fame, elevating her as one of the most valuable contemporary artists. Her work sold for millions, with Wild Dog's Claw being the bestseller. Animals act on instinct, killing and bloodthirsty by nature. Yet, what about humans who claim to be higher beings? They traverse concrete jungles, surviving by selling their dignity and morals, devouring their kind for profit. Melena thought about the boy daily. Even when starving and dizzy, she resolutely refused to eat human flesh. With only 1 day left before the monthly room switch, the instigators finally arrived. They used mattresses as shields to enhance their defense, launching a surprise attack on the unprepared cannibals. Both sides clashed violently, with everyone fighting in a frenzy. The old man, consumed by rage, accidentally killed his lover in the chaos. Stricken with grief, he lost the strength to wield his blade and hid under a bed. Meanwhile, the bearded savage betrayed Melena. Starving for a month, she lacked the strength to resist. As his hands closed around her neck, cutting off her breath, the old man stealthily handed her a sharp knife, helping her turn the tables. The brutal battle lasted only 5 minutes, just as the food platform descended. The corpses were sent down, becoming a feast for those at the lower levels. In the end, only Melena, the old man, and the enforcer Doggin remained. Melena told Doggin she would treat his wounds first. Over the next month, she would carefully cut pieces of his flesh to feed him so he would endure a slow death. However, she did not carry out her words. Instead, she swiftly ended his life. She had no time to waste. Preparations for escape needed to be completed before the room switch that night. She invited the cannibalist old man to escape with her, but he refused. To him, escaping the pit meant nothing. He understood that society itself was a larger prison. The real cage was in their minds. No matter where you go, you remain your own prisoner. Melena understood his words. Once, she sought to escape guilt and regret. Now, she wanted only to fulfill the resistance started by Mr. Fatty and Miss One-Arm. Earlier, she had torn the painting, swallowed a large piece, and choked herself unconscious, avoiding the anesthetic gas. At the slide's peak, a boy ruled over the other children. Before management took her, they whispered something in her ear. The other children, sensing she wouldn't return, looked deeply saddened. When Melena awoke, she saw prison staff handling decomposing corpses. The pit had become a zero-gravity space. Pretending to be a corpse, she sneaked to level 333, hiding under a bed as staff restrained a boy on another. Melena had often imagined traveling back in time to save the boy who died tragically. Now, she had her chance. Ignoring her injuries and disorientation, she freed the boy and embraced him tightly. Though battered, she protected him. She began hallucinating, seeing a grand dining table where the boy was the centerpiece. Holding a blade, she recoiled and dropped it. The scene shifted. By morning, she cradled the boy, descending into the darkness. From the shadows, figures emerged, whispering that her journey ends here, but the boy still has one last chance. Melena understood, gently laying the sleeping boy down. She watched as the platform ascended with him, surrounded by those she had lost. Wandering in the dark, she finally saw her ex-boyfriend, revealed as the protagonist of the first story. They embraced, reunited, perhaps finding freedom at last. At the pit's bottom, level 333, was a pile of corpses. Logically, no living being should be there. Melena likely died while saving the boy, her body joining the pile. Yet her soul found redemption, reconciling with herself through sacrifice. Protecting the boy in dire circumstances, she glimpsed humanity's purest goodness. Her boyfriend later joined her, but as a leader among the enforcers. Like her, he planted a seed of hope. It's likely that they escaped their hell, finding true freedom. The rescued children will carry on their unfinished mission. On a broader scale, this story critiques society. Law takes center stage, but sacrifices fairness for order when the two conflict. People harm each other for survival, but even reaching the top layer offers no freedom. They remain prisoners. The true masters of the hunger pit are its managers, though even they likely answer to powers above. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.